Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my show, guys. I'm excited about today's guest, Kristian Kabuay. I hope I'm not botching your name. Is it letting you unmute? So just a little tidbit and intro about Kristian. Thanks to my awesome team members, they found him. Very talented artist who's been featured on TED Talks and has spoken at universities like Stanford, Berkeley, University of the Philippines, and he does live shows. It's pretty amazing what you've already accomplished. You also Tokyo University, Philippine embassies across Europe. That's pretty awesome. And so thank you for taking the time to hop on my humble show today.
Yes, thank you for having me. And now that you mentioned those things, it seems like it was a long time ago. I think we need like how like they have what's that BC AD. We need something like that was like pre-pandemic, and because those things happened before then. But now I think,
Really?
and now I'm kind of like refreshed and eager at it now. Right after this 2.5 year, and we're still going through this collective trauma, and I think that it's a good time to talk about this topic.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you wanted to first, like, you could give probably a better intro of yourself, better than what I did, but we will dive into your story too. So you're originally from San Francisco, right? But you were born in the Philippines?
Yes, born in the Philippines, and the typical diaspora story, where a dictator comes to the scene and the family, escapes, or not really escape. I'm romanticizing it, but the family moves to greener pastures, which is America, and we land in the tropical paradise of San Francisco. Specifically, the Mission District, and then Excelsior, and I'm getting very local, and Saramonte and all of that stuff. So
Oh
I
my
think
God.
that is very typical. So I have the typical, I would say, Gen X millennial diaspora story.
Yeah, I know it's funny because the same thing. I know we were talking earlier about how, we had and we do have very intelligent parents that moved out here, and then even as qualified and smart as they are, they had to do really hard jobs. Like, they were in blue collar jobs. It was not the glamorous picture that they were told America was to be. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to touch on that too. Like, what was it like for you growing up in the Bay Area?
Yeah. So so my family, when they came over, I guess now the term's called like chain migration, where the grandparents come over or the parents come over, then they petition their kids one by one, and that's what happened to my family. And my dad, really smart guy, went to Ateneo, one of the top universities in the Philippines, which is like equivalent to like a Berkeley, Stanford, Ivy League, all of that. But when he came to the Bay Area, San Francisco, he had to, do these laborious jobs. It was either like they didn't consider this diploma, like what's Ateneo, it's not SF State or anything like that. And he even had to take an ESL class, even though my dad spoke perfect English. He grew up English as his first language because my grandmother had that colonizer gaze and wanted her children to speak English first before the native languages of the Philippines. And so he, again, immigrant story, had to figure out his way, to do the crappy work, and then get that cushy, corporate job in a suit and tie, and you get the Mercedes Benz, live the American dream. But they don't tell you at first the milk can be sour when you move here.
Yeah, and I'm sure it wasn't easy also. I mean, looking back to, I mean, I used to hang out with my friends going ceremony. It looks better now since I recently visited. It used to not be the most beautiful mall to go to, but I heard it's doing well over there. So, and which high school did you go to? Did you go to?
I grew up. So again, another thing here in the city, right? Mission, and then you kind of hustle, work harder, and then what do? You move to the suburbs. You move to the East Bay, here in the Bay Area. So growing up in Fremont, Union City area, I went to multiple high schools. I went to a school called Kennedy. I went to Mission San Jose, and it was an experience. I didn't really fit in. I didn't really like it, but it was just going through the motions, just trying to discover things. The only thing that kind of kept me sane was the hustle, selling candy, selling basketball cards, comics, gambling quarters in high school and things like that. So I looked at school more of as a hustle, which I think now they should teach you more of that, right? Rather than focusing on the capitals of all the states that you may get quizzed on, in case someone asks you that. What's the capital of Florida? Stuff like that.
That's why you remember Tallahassee. It's crazy. Joe Coy is coming to Tallahassee, right, in November. It's
Really?
insane. I know, random. I know. But yeah, no, there's a Filipino community here in North Florida. I did not even know that before moving out here. But one thing I wanted to ask you too, where you moved, and I had to move around a lot growing up too, because just survival. Like you could either, also my parents didn't know at the time, real estate, the value of investment property, and you can actually make more money just holding on to a property. Anyways, things that they learned after the fact, right? So were there Filipinos in those areas also, or did you just feel like you didn't fit in because you were new all the time?
There was always Filipinos around. Like the neighborhood that I grew up with, there are a lot of we were like I don't know, this might date me, but we were like a Benetton ad. If you remember the Benetton ads. And so
Oh my
there's
gosh, I remember those.
yeah, there's everyone's like the United Nations. We were so diverse. Like even our white guy in our neighborhood was diverse. He was from Australia. So I had the privilege, I guess, to live in this neighborhood where I got to learn the things from my Korean friends, my Samoan friends, and see the similarities of our cultures. And I genuinely was interested, going to their houses and, seeing the decorations, the different food, the different smells, and the different things that, how their mom yells at them, and what the context was. And so that was like my first, my first education of like international, I guess, management was with my friends around elementary to junior high.
That's really neat. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember after moving away from the Bay Area and from California in general, I didn't realize how diverse, like in a sense, we were blessed to grow up in that kind of environment where diversity was there, And so now that it is kind of a main topic in the last couple of years, it's interesting that people still have to be educated on how to be, how to communicate, those kinds of things. But I'm like, I grew up with that, Why wouldn't you guys be open to talking to other cultures and mingle with other cultures? I think it's a great experience.
Exactly. I in different religions, I went to houses that were a Muslim household. I even went to like this Southern Baptist church. I remember singing songs. I remember my friend Andre. I don't know where he is now, but I went to his church with his family, and they were from the South, and it was quite an experience and learning and being exposed to these things.
Yeah. So when did you start realizing you were interested in art? Was it when you were younger, or did you discover it later on in life?
I believe that all of us start off as artists, as kids. We all draw, we all paint, we have some creativity, we talk, our imagination is great. But then as we get older, we start adulting and we get it beaten out of us by the system. And what's interesting is that you go to any corporate job, they say, oh, we value creativity, out of the box thinking, but the whole system is against you on that. The goal of the system is to strip away, your imagination, wild thinking out of the box. And literally just drawing. So me, I always was an artist, but there were times where I had to stop because I had to, oh shoot, I gotta put on a suit and tie and be an adult. But later, as I got older, when I came back from living in the Philippines, then I retreated back to art as a way to as mental health and as a way to ground myself and as a meditation and to reconnect with my culture and myself.
Wow. And you coined the term. I mean, here's the other segue to this is that you coined the term pre-Filipino script in 2011. So when did you discover this script?
Yeah, so I coined the term because when I first started talking about the script and the culture publicly, I would use these academic terms to sound smart. I would say like pre-colonial, pre-Hispanic, yeah, because that's what the books and stuff I read, and that's what they would use. But people would just kind of glaze over, and I said, okay, well, they're not stopping or having a conversation, and so I said pre-Philippines, pre-Filipino, and all my signs and in my language. And then people would stop and say, "What do you mean by that? Weren't we always Filipino?" Well, or they would try to get a gotcha question. Well, if we weren't the Philippines, then what would we be? And my comeback would always be, well, let's have a conversation about it. And to me, the conversation is where the value is from. But most people don't really want to have that conversation. They, maybe want to have a reaction to it. But, even that is a seed that is put in the minds that, yes, we did have a culture prior to colonization. We were a functioning society. We had these things, but we did not exist as a people only when the Europeans came.
Did you study? I mean, did you discover this in your studies when you went to college in the Philippines?
No. So for those that have not studied in the Philippines, in the brief history, the Philippines is a mini America, and we were called Little Brown Brothers during the time of American colonization at the turn of the century, and so we're very Americanized even up to today, and we don't learn about our own culture in the Philippines. There are, in fact, laws that are being pushed to teach other things like Korean and Mandarin and things like that because they are more economically viable. And because when you're in a country that has economic challenges, then they try to look at things from a dollars and cents perspective. And yeah, people say, okay, yeah, cool, that makes sense. But we've been at it for 100 years, over 100 years. Something is not working. And I would like to say that a model that does work is like if you are unapologetic about your culture, you talk about it, invest in your people, then you will be successful. If you look at the Indians, you look at the British, you look at the Jewish community, and you look at the Chinese community, Japanese, and now look who's come up in the last 30 years, the Koreans. And we remember in the 80s, right? The 80s, we would call Samsung, Samsung, and now everything's K-pop and all of that. And so by investing in their own version of Americanism, now you see BTS, Blackpink, H Mart, Netflix is full of K-dramas. And so their culture is exported in a socio-economic way that is beneficial to the world, especially for the Koreans. And that was a conscious decision by the government and the people that they're going to invest in themselves.
Wow, that's a really insightful point. And it's really true. I am seeing that and noticing that. And one thing I'm also noticing is Filipinos are also becoming more mainstream, especially Filipino Americans, at least the ones who've made it. I mean, to me, Joe Coy is a great example because he made it to Netflix. He fought his way through to get featured there. And so I really think that's really my dad would be like cheering for what you're saying right now because he really has a passion for the Philippines to get to that level of growth and success by investing in the future of and education in the young Filipino generations there. So so go ahead. I know that I feel like I want to ask you so many different questions because you do you have an edutainment business, and then you also sell custom art. You have books, and you do events. Yeah, I mean, there's so much we can talk about. But along the line, like, what led you to go to the Philippines, back to the Philippines, and then what brought you back to the U.S.? Like, what's the story in that?
Yeah, so after high school, I graduated, whoop-de-doo, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to UC Berkeley because I used to hang out on Telegraph all the time, but I wasn't smart enough to go to UC Berkeley. I got C's and D's in high school, and so I went to a junior college and I took an astronomy class, and it was cool. And then I felt, early in the morning, but junior college felt like high school, except you're paying for it. So I said, screw this. I'm going to the Philippines, meant to stay there for like 6 months to find myself and all of that jazz. But I ended up staying for about 10 years. And so
Wow.
when I was out there, learning things as an American, they call me Amboy, American boy is what they call me. And I got to experience many different things. It's like a hodgepodge of East meets West, and met a lot of people from around the world that were, I guess they called us like expats, people that were, I guess, sent off by their parents for being bad boys or bad girls in London, because that was always a thing. If you're bad, I'll send you to the Philippines.
It
But
was. I
little
remember.
did they
And
know,
you'd hear stories about being sent.
yeah,
People say,
exactly. But little did they know, when they got sent to the Philippines, they got worse. Like the people that I knew from like Daly City, and they went over there. All right, I'm gonna start a new gang here.
"Oh my god!"
Now, like now I'm like the chief up here. People look up to me. So I experience all of that, and but I did not learn the script out there. I did find a couple books with some references. People sometimes they ask me, like, they romanticize it, like, did you have to climb up a mountain? Did you have to like chop a chicken's head off and drink the blood? I said, no, I learned from a white guy in Canada via the internet. That's how I learned the script. We were
That's
pen pals, and his name's Paul
wow.
Morrow. Shout out to Paul Morrow. So that's how I
That's
learned
so
it.
cool. That's so awesome. Wow, that's really. But then you went by choice, though. You weren't sent away. Like, were your
Yeah, I
parents
wasn't
happy
sent
about
away.
that?
No, I was threatened, after, being a ragamuffin in my youth. But I figured that it was all in jest. But I decided to go. I was surprised myself. Um, and I think that not that many people would do it. But again, I think that it's just such a great experience. And we were talking earlier that we talk about the college life and the romanticism about it. But if you really want to experience college life, go to school abroad. It doesn't have to be Philippines. I mean, go to a college where they don't speak English, or English isn't the language. You'll truly experience the world. And I think that is much more valuable than what you learn in the books.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And learning how to communicate in a different language and connect with people in a different culture, that's a huge, valuable human experience for sure. And now, okay. Okay, let's take you back to when you moved back to the US.
hmm
Where and did you so you moved back to the Bay Area? Is that where it all started when you started doing actual artwork?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after I finished college, so I went to a college. I went to a bunch of different schools in the Philippines. I went to it was called like a hotel restaurant management college, which is kind of like a trade vocational school, because I wasn't smart enough to go to the top universities and follow in my father's footsteps. I said, well, this I took a test and I bombed it. It was hard. I said, I never took trigonometry in high school. I went to a public high school. It's like, what's all these botany questions? What are they?
It's a
Why is there a
different kind of yeah, you're smart, but the right brain's smart. And the thing is, a lot of these the educational systems designed for book learning and book teaching. It's just that's why I don't really go by grades either. I'm just like, that doesn't mean that you're not smart. So
Yeah, so I couldn't get into those, so I had to figure out like, all right, let me figure out where I can go. So I tried like a hospitality trade school where ultimately I was going to be trained to work at a hotel or be a flight attendant or something like that because I met the height requirement. And so finally, I found this business school. And so I found this business school where there are a lot of Americans that went there, and I found out why because it was pretty easy. It was done in like the American style, and later on, a few years later, I was looking up on Google because I needed to get a transcript or something. And guess what? The school got shut down because it didn't meet the standards of the Philippine Educational Department. I won't mention the school. I don't want to get sued or whatever, but
yeah.
but there. So, but I did graduate in I have a BSBA, which is Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. Don't know what that is. But
Nice.
obviously, being from America, they say you got to work at a call center. You speak good English. You could be a manager, make lots of money, etc. And in my head, I had the ego of saying, "No, I'm not. I'm too good to work at a call center. Forget that." So I come back to America, and my parents at the time were living in Tracy. So, and you mentioned Bay Area, Tracy. I don't know if Tracy, so for those that don't know, the biggest things, they have lots of buffets, smells like cows, and MC Hammer moved there when he went broke. So those
So
are the
did you
things
meet him?
Tracy is known for. Yes, I would see him at the gym dancing by himself and
No
at
way.
the taqueria. Yes. And I
Oh
drove by his
my.
house because someone showed me his house.
Oops.
And he drove a Miata.
So
So
small town. Wow.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow.
So I lived there, and guess what the only job I could find in that town was? Guess.
Uh, I'm guessing like fast food or something like
No, a
Target. I
call
don't know.
center.
Oh,
A call center.
I should have guessed.
Yeah.
Call center, like
Yeah.
owned by an American or
No, a call center for restoration hardware. And for those that don't know, restoration hardware is a high-end American furniture store that sells like $2,000 ottomans. So I would spend 8 hours a day getting yelled at because an ottoman is late to their Bel Air mansion or
oh
something. So
no. So you had to
so
deal
that
with
was
those
my
kinds of
job.
customers.
Yeah, and I was, making minimum wage and kind of like homesick, and so that's where I took refuge in art. And as
Wow.
the obvious thing, if you're kind of homesick, not feeling too hot, what do? You get a tattoo. That's the obvious reason. So I got a tattoo, and this tattoo artist named Alex Figueroa, he actually encouraged me to, hey, you know about the script? Because I got my last name done on my arm, and we were talking about it. And he said, you should, put it on social media. I said, okay, cool. Then I put on MySpace, Friendster, and started having those conversations, not just about the script, but I learned when people started asking me these questions, like they're giving me context. Like my father, I didn't really know him. He was Filipino. He passed away. Or um, I want to teach my kids. Or my favorite is, oh, I married a Filipina and I want to impress her and her family, so I need to learn this ancient writing system. So that was my first lesson that, okay, there's some cultural value to this writing.
Yeah, and there's really, I mean, I don't want to be ignorant, but it seems like you're the only one who really knows knows all about it, right? I mean, as far as
Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm not, but I was probably the loudest, and because I have a background in like, or I taught myself like how to make websites and things like that, and so I saw there was a fundamental shift from like how people find information to the internet, because I've been on the internet since its inception, and so I registered by Bayan.com, which is a name of the script, and I was all over, and then so while I was all over the internet, and at the time when people would Yahoo the script, I would show up. And so it is a perception that, okay, you're the only person that is at the time kind of advocating this, or dumb enough to. It's like, why putting so much effort into a nearly extinct writing system? And then over the years, then people have taken what I've done, and now they're making TikToks about it and getting millions of views and getting paid based on the work that me and my colleagues did in the olden days of like 2008.
Really? And are they giving you any shout outs or credit? Because
Sometimes, but it's not necessary though, because to me, my goal, as I look at this as a cultural practice, my goal is to become irrelevant, meaning that I should not be the gatekeeper. I should not be the only one that knows this. And people should not look at it as a special talent or, a gift from the heavens. It should be like, oh, you could write in this old writing system. So what? No big deal. So can a billion other people. And that means that the cultural practice has been revitalized because it has been normalized. And that's the goal. And that's quite opposite of like a hustler. The entrepreneurial thing is like to literally put yourself out of business. And that's what I did for a while. And that's why you mentioned that I'm doing all these other things, is because I had to find a way to pivot, a way to create multiple vertical, revenue streams. And it also enabled me to explore my other interests that are all adjacent to the greater mission of our culture.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's really true. If you just like kind of gatekeep things, it's almost worse. But it seems like the strategy.
That's what academics do, right?
Yeah.
Academics, they gatekeep, and then guess what? I have a paper. I got or they have a book for $400, and so that's the difference between myself and like academics of this writing. It's like, oh, I'm here for the people, for the culture. You're just to get a citation or get tenured at your university. So there's quite a difference between the academics versus cultural practitioners.
Interesting. And so, okay, you mentioned how you found different ways to help support you. And did you like support yourself this whole time? Is your business kind of on its own, or have you had to find other means of sources of revenue?
Yeah, so I've always had a day job, but I changed my mentality to my day job being my side hustle, even though the day job paid a way lot more. But to me, your passion and the things that you're interested in should be your full-time thing. And so I changed my mentality to that. And I've always looked at my corporate job, my corporate consulting of like these big retail conglomerates, startups, things like that, as my side gig, as I'm going to do this for the money and then out. And so recently, I got laid off, and it didn't affect me. And where, because I've been working on these things, and okay, I can see that my art and advocacy education is maybe like 25% of my income. But I know that if I have more time and dedicate those things that I did for this big corporation that really doesn't care about you, and I focus it on myself and my people, then I'll be able to survive.
I really like that perspective, because in a sense, it also, it really protects you. And then at the same time, you have control, right, over your destination. Yes. When you're not heavily dependent on this one entity that really, like you said, most of the time they don't care.
Yeah, we are family. It's like, really? Yeah. We're family? You don't even know who I am.
Yeah, especially corporate America, like big companies, they see you as okay, this person can be replaced.
Employee number, so, oh, I thought we're family. Why do I have a number,
Yeah, exactly. And I can play video just so people can see how, but I don't think it's going to play sound. So you're welcome to even talk over it. And I'll just mention over the stage. So here a bit about like how this all got started. Did you kind of, did you sign up to present, or how did this happen?
Yeah, so I can trace all of these things from the very first time I was uncomfortable. And usually artists are looked at as these introverts, hard to work with people with bad attitudes, like their stuff don't stank. And all of that is true. I'll admit it. But I had a realization where I had to kind of get over that. And all of this came about was when I said yes to some creepy dude who walked up to me at an event and said, "Hey, would you like to curate an art an art section in this festival?" It's like, I don't know who this person is, but I said yes. And then from then on, it led to multiple opportunities. And so this specific one, the curator of this TEDx talk watched a video that I did with AJ Plus, Al Jazeera Plus, and they interviewed me about the writing system and talked about the deeper meanings about the script and how it relates to, say, like the diaspora, American colonialism, things like that. And so I was invited to do this talk in Florida and in Tampa. And it was a bit of, storytelling, things that I've done before. But it was quite a challenge because it's a very limited time and things like that. The camera was like focused on me, but they didn't show the slides and, didn't kind of get the jokes I was telling. But it was a great experience. It was presenting with this guy named Mikey, who is a ultra marathon runner, and just Italian guy. Is his gorgeous model, and then gosh, you're gonna put me next to this guy who's run through 130-degree weather, and I'm talking about the script. So I had that imposter syndrome kind of creeping up, but it was actually a dream of mine, which I don't want to say dream, but it was a path that I wanted to take, because I actually met Christopher Anderson, who's the curator of TED Talks, at a book signing. So he has this book, like how to speak publicly, TED Talks that he wrote. And I figured out a way, how can I get a deeper conversation with this dude? So he was signing his books at a bookstore here in San Francisco. And I waited to be the last person. And then I said, okay, I got to figure out, because he was signing his books and he wasn't even looking up. So yeah, whatever. And then, so when it was my turn, I said, in your talk, you mentioned that you open with impact. And I've been thinking about this for the last half hour since you said that, because I specialize in an ancient writing from the Philippines. And then he looked up, his eyes went big, and he closed his eyes. He goes like this: imagine what you write every day disappears, or something like that, right? And he meant like to contextualize it in like what you do now, whether the Roman alphabet and things like that. And they said, boom. And then I used that in my opening line when I did the TEDx talk.
That is so cool. And I remember it because I watched the first like set, part of this show. And I remember I didn't realize that was the story behind it. That is so cool. So
he gave it to me. He gifted that to me, and I still use it to this day.
I love it. That's the neat thing about living there in San Francisco too. You really have the opportunity to meet really cool people. It's not too far. It's not too long of a drive either. And I didn't know until after the fact, moving away and all of those things. It's just like, oh man, it was just around the corner. If I really just paid attention to everything that's happening outside the bubble of high school. But I like, really, for anyone who's interested, is there anything you want to highlight that you're doing now that you love to promote? We have your social media handles that we can share so people can connect with you.
Yeah, so the latest iteration of myself is I've started a publishing company, and you mentioned the term edutainment, and that term means that educating but yet entertaining. And I feel that for people that have been doing like education activism work for a long time, I think the next progression is to get into entertainment. And entertainment, doesn't mean you Jokoi tell jokes or create a blockbuster movie or anything like that. But it could be, what you're doing too, as educating but yet entertaining. And that's the next iteration of my work. And that has moved from like writing these nonfiction books, like instructional books, workbooks, into graphic novels that, tell the story of our people. And so like the book that's just got released, oh no, yeah, can you see it? Yeah, it's called Dasig. And so it's a big 140-page graphic novel that, think of it's a retelling of when the Spanish, there you go, Magellan visited the Philippines. So think of it as a Disney princess movie, but violent.
Now that sounds entertaining. But violent.
Now, yeah, okay. Because there's a lot of books, and you got to make it for the kids. It's like, all right, I've done many things for kids, but how about us adults? I grew up in the 80s and 90s watching these things, and I think I'm pretty normal. So I think that let me create something that I personally want to see selfishly, and I bet there are a lot of people that would want to see that as well. And we already have a lot of kid friendly stuff, but let's create something for the adults.
And you just reminded me too that this is really true, where especially now here in America, it's starting to come to light where a lot of the things that have been successful in the last 20 years or so was done by Filipinos. Like, inventions, animations, there's so much talent here. And so, and like what you're doing with the graphic novel, that reminds me of Stan Lee when he first started. And I don't know if you saw the documentary, but I saw that one, and it was really neat to see how he just wanted to highlight stories of real people dealing with, hero life and then real life, and juggling that. And I think it's kind of neat how you're diving into that genre.
Yeah, and it's fun, like this type of work. It can be, mentally and physically draining, and you can get frustrated, dealing with these, systems and roadblocks. But to me, if you have fun, then it's just added plus points, because there's no greater way to kill your passion than to monetize it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And then in the end, sometimes, well, it is happening now, thanks to online social media, YouTube, people who are actually focusing on their creative side, tapping into the creative passion, if you will, and it takes time, but people will pay you for things that you are passionate about. And
exactly.
I mean, yeah.
And whether we have to retrain our community, because we don't ever go to a movie theater and go, hey, let me watch Mission Impossible for free, or can I get a discount? Or we go to Target, hey, can I get a discount for this shirt? It's like, no, you should actually be paying me premium, because you can't get this stuff at at Nordstrom's or whatever. So, and you should be paying more. Actually, there should be an opposite of a discount, or an opposite of a Black Friday sale, where, let me pay these folks extra 20%. And I think that we should start that trend.
Yeah. I mean, you are pioneering the way in many ways, highlighting pre-Filipino script and being vocal about our community, which is really cool. And you've already gone all over the world doing it. So what's the plan for this graphic novel? You're just going to start like adding to the volumes and then seeing if there's a potential for it being picked up for a production or a movie?
Yeah. I mean, I like to. Some people would say you should serialize it. I mean, you have issue 1, issue 2, but I'm impatient. And so I just want everything out at once. So all of these are going to be these big graphic novels, or a story that, encompasses itself into one book. But yes, the ultimate goal with these books is, yes, I would love to sell out, and, Netflix, and, change the story a little, whatever, pay me $1 million or whatever the licensing thing is, whatever. And yeah, I would love to do that. And then, years later I have the story like, oh, after I sold Netflix, they changed it and the corporate demand, but they paid me, and then I'm
Yeah.
off to bigger and greater things. And that's where, as a creative, sometimes you have to have, that leeway of like, okay, let me, I'm not so married to my project, but for the greater good. And
Yeah.
I think that is something that I would like to explore, is to
Mhm.
getting these picked up by more mainstream. And that's the goal. I have like three that are in the pipeline,
Wow.
3 stories. And I'm just going through them. And I think that by end of next year, end of 2024, I'll probably have like 3 or 4 graphic novels done.
Wow. And are you doing this through self-publishing, or do you like
Yes.
okay. Nice.
Yeah, self-publishing, multiple ways. I have a mass produced, and then also you can go through Amazon. So there's so many opportunities now just to get your
Mhm.
stuff out there, and you can get into that analysis paralysis of studying everything and all the numbers. But to me, it's like, get your stuff out there, test it out, see who likes it or who doesn't, and just keep creating.
That's the best. I think, like, that's the other thing too. It's like same thing with the show. It's not I don't have huge YouTube following, but that's not the goal. The goal is retelling the story, having the platform to tell other people's stories of Filipino Americans. So thank you so much for hopping on this show. I really appreciate that you took the time. For those of you who would like to get in contact with Kristian and connect with him, he's so approachable and really easy to speak to. And I thank you again for hopping on.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And yeah, if I don't get back to your email, you can go to my website and you could chat with a virtual version of myself. And
Ooh.
it's powered by ChatGPT. It's about 80% accurate. And so, yeah, you go on the website, and
You
that's
you
again a way to scale yourself.
see, that's a whole nother conversation that I'll have to, and I always end up wanting to do a follow-up with all my guests, like, because you really could, like you said, with edutainment, are you gonna have a series or a course where you can teach people how to do that?
Yeah, so I have a online school that I'm creating. There you go. Balay school. Balay meaning home. It's a Visayan
Oh.
word. So the first course is going to be about the writing, and then the second course is actually going to be about cultural entrepreneurship in the diaspora. Because
Oh my gosh! You didn't even mention that earlier.
yeah, there's so many. So, but because I went to business school, and business is really ones and zeros. You look at finance spreadsheets, multivariate marketing testing, but it's like, no, we need to talk about the psychology of our people.
Yeah.
That is more important. Your relationships with, like in business school, they don't teach you about like, oh, what if you have a parent that wants you to be a nurse or a
Yeah.
mailman? How do you deal with that pressure, or dealing with, you know, a full-time job during the day and then doing your side hustle at home and doing Filipino pop-ups on the weekends. They don't teach you about that stuff. So that's the stuff that I'm going to be teaching when that launches next year.
That's exciting because I'm actually trying to figure out and collaborate with those who are interested in doing something similar. We're not that I would build as something extensive as what you're doing, but it's more like highlighting people who have already made success and helping others figure out how they can do it for themselves too. So,
Yeah,
like, if you are interested, I'd love to have you on as a guest speaker and talk about what you're going to launch then too.
sure. Let's do it.
Thank you again, Kristian. I'll see you on the other side. And for those of you who are interested, we'd love to have you on our show.
Thank you.